All right. For my first pick and the second overall pick of the week, number 6, Sunday 6-pack presented by FanDuel, going with the Jacksonville Jaguars plus 1.5 at Indianapolis. And this isn't the usual Jaguar spot where we go in Jacksonville, but this Indianapolis team, I want to fade this Indianapolis team, and I want to do it. I want to buy low on this Jaguars team because this Indianapolis team is terrible. Like it's really just a terrible football team. And now they're coming off a 10-day break, and it still looks like they're missing guys. They have Shaq Leonard still hasn't returned to practice. You have
Kwity Paye
got hurt.
Buckner's dealing with an injury.
Right. Jonathan Taylor still hasn't returned to practice after that long layoff, which is probably the most concerning. This team got outgained by Jacksonville, by like 100 yards in that first matchup. And granted, they didn't have Michael Pittman, but they did have Jonathan Taylor. It's not like they had nobody, and they got outgained 331 to 218 by Jacksonville. Even more concerning, they had 9 first downs in that game. 9 first downs. Now, okay, you look at this Colts team, and what's happened since then. They've got a couple wins. We were on them against Kansas City. They get lucky against Denver, but Jacksonville, on the other hand, they lose ugly to the Texans last week. Well, Jacksonville, as you pointed out earlier, they outgained the Texans 422 to 248 in that game. It's just, they had issues in the red zones, things that will kind of revert back to the norm over time, but forget that.
0 for 3 on 4th down.
Yeah.
They turned it over, lost a turnover battle. They went 0 for 3 in the red zone, and the Texans went 1 for 1 scoring touchdowns.
Yeah. But even with that, I saw a lot of things that I think are encouraging. Trevor Lawrence, he's missing some throws high. He just has to settle down a little bit, but Travis Etienne, they're starting to unleash him, and he's looking really good. I think he adds an element to that offense that they need, a little explosiveness, a little juice. And Evan Ingram, we got an Evan Ingram sighting. And I think, long term, that's also going to help Lawrence because the receiving core is actually pretty good. It's been somewhat inconsistent, but I think it's pretty good. So the offense, but let's just look at the metrics, this season. Jacksonville kind of it was like the darling early on, and been up and down. Jacksonville is number 7 in overall DVOA on the year. The Indianapolis Colts, 32, dead last. The Indianapolis Colts are not only by the eye test, but by the advanced metrics, the worst team in football. And Jacksonville's top 10 in pressure rate. Matt Ryan he just can't survive under pressure. He's fumbling the ball. He's already got double-digit fumbles. He's throwing bad interceptions. He's one of the worst rated quarterbacks under pressure. And now he doesn't have an offensive line. Kelly, their center, he also missed practice. So, this offensive line has been bad. Even the players that are supposed to be good. The Colts are 32nd dead last in offensive DVOA, dead last in total DVOA. I just don't think this is a good football team. And we might be looking back at this Colts team. I mean, Atlanta's feisty. Seattle and Detroit can score. Houston has a pulse. This really might be the worst team in the National Football League. So, I don't think just because you're in Jacksonville and you switch to Indianapolis, you get 9 first downs and you just don't match. And by the way, it's not just at home. Indianapolis under Frank Reich, 1-7 with 1 push against the spread versus the Jaguars. So it's not just in Jacksonville. They just haven't figured out this team since Reich took over. I'm just fading everything to do with this Colts team. Give me the Jags.
Yeah, I don't mind taking the Jags here, but I'd rather tease them, and we'll talk about that in our teaser segment later. I am just a bit concerned. I'm pretty sure that Indianapolis is not good. I think the Jacksonville's going to win the division. It's the best team in the division. They just have some puzzling, head-scratching losses. I mean, look, they lost to Washington. We talked about how Washington is terrible and can't beat anybody. Then, you still lose to the Texans. Trevor Lawrence's numbers against cover 2 are a bit worrisome, and that was one of the takeaways from last week. if you look the only 2 games that he faced cover 2 majority of the game were last week's opener and his debut against Texans, and then last week against the Texans. And yeah, he didn't look great. So I don't know. I'm still trying to get a feel for the Jags. I think that they have more upside than the Colts, and maybe I'm just sour grapes because they ruined Survivor for me. But yeah, there's, you look at the Philly game too is in like weather. They played the Chargers, who had a bunch of guys hurt. So I'm having trouble just grasping where they stand. So I don't mind your play, but I'd rather tease them in the range that they're at. 2. We'll talk about that later. So yeah, I'll save them for that segment.
Let me give a couple. I mentioned big underdog week. I'll give a couple of trends for Jacksonville. Week 6 dogs off a loss of 7 or more, so loss of a touchdown or more. 51-31, 62% since 2005. Week 6 dogs below 50% against the spread. Coming in 67-43-1, 61%. I mean, it's really uncanny, like to the point where I'm almost at the point where I could give you a reason to bet every single dog on this slate. Like it's just one of those weeks. Because it's kind of like, when you're modeling and like the first few weeks, it's overreactions. But like now, it's like you have pretty much only the new season data, but teams are also changed. Like teams that like struggled early on are like switching things up. So it just creates an interesting situation, I think, this week with underdogs. Not necessarily for the same reasons that they're profitable in weeks 1 to 3, but still, one of those kind of weeks where I think people,